Woman gives birth to conjoined twins and refuses to look at them. What happens next will leave you speechless. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You might think this is just another story about family hardships, but the events unfolding are much more shocking than you might think. Shortly after giving birth, the mother refuses to see the conjoined twins. Doctors and nurses try to convince her, but she is immediately rejected. The news spreads, and the local community is in turmoil. Some condemn the mother, while others try to understand her pain. The hospital decides to take action, and something surprising happens. An unexpected family shows up, offering what no one expected. The girl's story makes headlines, and their future begins to change in unbelievable ways, but with a twist that no one could have predicted. Maria, a young woman in her early 30s, was wheeled into the delivery room. Her husband, João, clutched her hand tightly, his eyes a mixture of excitement and worry. They had dreamed of this moment for years, overcoming numerous obstacles on their path to parenthood. Little did they know that fate had a twist in store for them, one that would test the very foundations of their love and humanity. As the first cries of their newborn daughter filled the room, relief washed over the new parents. The midwife placed the perfectly formed baby girl in Maria's arms, and for a moment, all was right with the world. They named her Lucia, after Maria's grandmother, a strong woman who had always been the family's pillar of strength. João kissed Maria's forehead, tears of joy streaming down his face. But their moment of bliss was short-lived. Dr. Marcos, the attending physician, furrowed his brow as he examined Maria. "There's another baby," he announced, his voice a mix of surprise and concern. The room, which had been filled with joyous chatter just moments ago, fell silent. Maria's grip on João's hand tightened as a fresh wave of contractions washed over her. What followed was a scene that would forever be etched in the memories of everyone present. As Dr. Marcos carefully guided the second baby out, his experienced hands froze for a split second. Attached to the infant was another tiny body. The silence in the room deepened, broken only by the rapid beeping of the heart monitor and the confused whimpers of the newborns. "Siamese twins," Dr. Marcos whispered, more to himself than anyone else. The babies, two girls joined at the chest, shared a leg between them. A collective gasp rippled through the room as the reality of the situation sank in. Maria, still groggy from the exhaustion of childbirth, craned her neck to see her newborns. As her eyes fell upon the conjoined twins, her face contorted in a mix of shock, horror, and disbelief. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "No, no, no!" Her cries grew louder, filling the room with raw anguish. João stood frozen, his eyes wide with shock, unable to process the scene before him. Dr. Marcos quickly handed the conjoined twins to a nurse and moved to Maria's side, attempting to calm her. But Maria's cries only intensified, her body shaking with sobs as she turned away from her newborn daughters. In the chaotic moments that followed, a heart-wrenching decision was made. Overwhelmed by the unexpected turn of events and unprepared for the challenges that lay ahead, Maria and João made the painful choice to leave the hospital without their daughters. The weight of their decision hung heavy in the air as they signed the necessary paperwork, avoiding eye contact with the hospital staff and each other. As the new parents walked out of the hospital, leaving behind not just the conjoined twins but also their firstborn, Lucia, a profound sense of loss and guilt settled over them. They had come to the hospital as expectant parents, full of hope and dreams for their future family. They left as shells of their former selves, carrying a burden that would haunt them for years to come. In the wake of this heart-wrenching abandonment, Dr. Marcos found himself at a crossroads. As he stood in the neonatal intensive care unit, gazing at the three newborn girls, Lucia in one incubator and the conjoined twins in another, he felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. These innocent lives, thrust into the world under such extraordinary circumstances, tugged at his heartstrings in a way he had never experienced before. Dr. Marcos had always prided himself on maintaining professional distance from his patients. It was a necessity in his line of work, a shield against the emotional toll that came with dealing with life and death on a daily basis. But as he watched the tiny chests of the triplets rise and fall in synchronized breaths, he felt that carefully constructed wall begin to crumble. He reached out and gently stroked Lucia's cheek, marveling at the softness of her skin. Her eyes, still unfocused, seemed to search for something, or someone, who wasn't there. "You're not alone," he whispered, surprising himself with the intensity of emotion in his voice. Turning to the conjoined twins, he studied their unique bond. Despite the challenges their physical connection presented, there was something beautiful in the way they instinctively sought comfort in each other's presence. He decided then and there to name them Emma and Hope. Emma for the strength they would need, and Hope for the future he envisioned for them. As the days passed, Dr. Marcos found himself spending more and more time in the NICU. He rearranged his schedule, took on fewer patients, and spent his free moments researching the complexities of caring for conjoined twins. The hospital staff watched with a mixture of admiration and concern as the usually reserved doctor poured his heart and soul into caring for the abandoned triplets. It was during one of his late-night vigils by the girls' bedsides that Dr. Marcos came to a life-altering realization. These children, Lucia, Emma, and Hope, needed more than just medical care. They needed love, stability, and a family. And in that moment, looking at their peaceful sleeping faces, he knew with absolute certainty that he wanted to be that family. The decision to adopt the triplets was not an easy one. Dr. Marcos wrestled with doubts and fears. Was he equipped to be a single father to 3 children, 2 of whom faced significant medical challenges? How would this affect his career? What would people say? But every time he looked at the girls, every time one of them wrapped their tiny hand around his finger, he knew in his heart that this was meant to be. The process of adoption was a whirlwind of paperwork, home visits, and legal proceedings. Dr. Marcos's colleagues rallied around him, offering support and helping to prepare his home for the arrival of 3 infants. The hospital administration, recognizing the unique situation, worked with him to adjust his schedule and responsibilities. Finally, after weeks of anticipation, the day arrived when Dr. Marcos could take his daughters home. As he carefully placed each girl in their car seats, Lucia in one, Emma and Hope sharing another specially designed for their needs, he felt a surge of love so powerful it nearly brought him to his knees. This was his family now, unconventional and unexpected, but bound by a love that defied all odds. The first few months were a blur of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and medical appointments. Dr. Marcos learned to juggle the needs of 3 infants while continuing his work at the hospital. He became an expert at one-handed diaper changes, mastered the art of preparing bottles with lightning speed, and developed a 6th sense for knowing which cry meant hunger and which meant discomfort. But amidst the chaos and exhaustion, there were moments of pure joy that made it all worthwhile. The first time Lucia smiled at him, her eyes crinkling at the corners just like his. The way Emma and Hope would calm instantly when placed in each other's arms. The sound of 3 different giggles filling his once quiet home. As the girls grew, so did the challenges. Dr. Marcos worked tirelessly with a team of specialists to ensure that Emma and Hope received the best possible care. They faced numerous surgeries and medical procedures, each one filling Dr. Marcos with a mix of hope and fear. But through it all, the bond between the sisters grew stronger. Lucia, though not physically connected to her sisters, developed an uncanny ability to sense their needs. She would often be found curled up next to Emma and Hope's specially designed crib, her small hand reaching through the bars to offer comfort. Dr. Marcos marveled at the intuitive connection between the triplets, a bond that seemed to transcend their unique circumstances. As the girls approached their 2nd birthday, Dr. Marcos and his team of medical experts began to seriously discuss the possibility of separating Emma and Hope. The decision weighed heavily on him. The surgery would be risky, with no guarantees of success. But as he watched his daughters struggle with the limitations of their connected bodies, he knew that giving them the chance at independent lives was worth the risk. The preparation for the surgery was intense. Dr. Marcos spent countless hours consulting with experts from around the world, studying every possible outcome, and preparing himself and his girls for what lay ahead. The night before the surgery, he sat by their bedside, holding their hands and singing softly, his heart full of love and trepidation. The surgery itself was a marathon that tested the limits of medical science and human endurance. For 48 grueling hours, Dr. Marcos paced the halls outside the operating room, alternating between fervent prayers and reviewing medical charts. The hospital staff, many of whom had been there since the girl's birth, rallied around him, offering support and words of encouragement. When the lead surgeon finally emerged, exhaustion etched on his face but a glimmer of hope in his eyes, Dr. Marcos felt his knees go weak. The surgery had been successful. Emma and Hope were separated, but the road ahead would be long and challenging. Hope had lost her leg in the process, a sacrifice necessary for both girls to survive. The weeks that followed were a roller coaster of emotions. There were setbacks and victories, moments of despair and bursts of joy. Dr. Marcos divided his time between the hospital and home, ensuring that Lucia didn't feel neglected while her sisters recovered. He watched in awe as Emma and Hope, now in separate beds for the first time in their lives, instinctively reached out for each other. As Hope began the process of adapting to life with a prosthetic leg, Dr. Marcos was struck by the resilience of his daughters. They faced each new challenge with a determination that belied their young age. Lucia became their biggest cheerleader, clapping and cheering as Hope took her first tentative steps with her new leg. The triplets. Early years were marked by a series of milestones, each one celebrated with the enthusiasm that only a parent who has faced the possibility of losing their children can muster. First words, first steps, first days of school. Each achievement was a testament to the girls' strength and the power of their bond as sisters. As they grew older, the unique challenges of raising triplets, two of whom had overcome such extraordinary odds, became more apparent. Dr. Marcos worked hard to ensure that each girl felt equally loved and valued, while also addressing their individual needs. He encouraged their differences as much as he celebrated their connection, wanting each of his daughters to develop her own identity. Lucia, the eldest by mere minutes, grew into a nurturing and protective older sister. She had an old soul, often surprising Dr. Marcos with her insightful observations and compassionate nature. Emma, one half of the formerly conjoined pair, was a bundle of energy and curiosity, always eager to explore and learn. And Hope, despite the physical challenges she faced, approached life with an infectious optimism that inspired everyone around her. The girls' first day of school was a milestone that filled Dr. Marcos with a mixture of pride and anxiety. As he watched them walk into the classroom, hand in hand, he felt a lump form in his throat. They looked so small, so vulnerable, and yet so brave. He knew that the world could be cruel, that his daughters might face challenges and prejudices because of their unique story. But he also knew that they had each other, and that their bond was stronger than any obstacle they might encounter. At first, things seemed to go smoothly. The girls adjusted well to the school routine, made friends, and excelled in their studies. Dr. Marcos breathed a sigh of relief, allowing himself to believe that perhaps the hardest part was behind them. But as the weeks passed, subtle changes began to emerge. Hope, always the most sensitive of the three, began to withdraw. Her usual brightness dimmed, and she became quieter, less eager to participate in class activities. Dr. Marcos noticed the change but initially attributed it to the natural ups and downs of childhood. It wasn't until he received a call from the school principal that he realized the full extent of the problem. The principal's voice was grave as she explained the situation. A group of children had been taunting Hope about her prosthetic leg, calling her names and excluding her from games during recess. The bullying had been going on for weeks. But Hope, not wanting to worry her family, had kept it to herself. Dr. Marcos felt a surge of anger and heartbreak as he listened to the principal's words. How could children be so cruel? How had he not noticed his daughter's pain? He thanked the principal for bringing the matter to his attention and promised to address it immediately. That evening, as the family sat down for dinner, Dr. Marcos gently broached the subject. "Girls," he began, his voice soft but serious, "I want to talk to you about something important." "Hope, sweetie, the principal called me today. She told me about what's been happening at school." Hope's eyes filled with tears as she looked down at her plate. Emma and Lucia exchanged worried glances, instinctively moving closer to their sister. Dr. Marcos continued, "I want you to know that what those children are doing is wrong. You are perfect just the way you are, Hope. Your leg doesn't define you. It's a part of your story, a testament to your strength." As Hope's tears began to fall, Emma and Lucia enveloped her in a tight hug. "We'll protect you," Lucia declared fiercely. "Nobody messes with our sister," Emma added, her eyes flashing with determination. Dr. Marcos felt a swell of pride at his daughter's solidarity, but he knew that protection wasn't the only answer. "Girls," he said gently, "while it's wonderful that you want to protect Hope, we need to find a way to address this that doesn't involve violence or retaliation. Can you think of any other ways we might handle this situation?" The girls were quiet for a moment, considering their father's words. Then Lucia spoke up. "What if we talked to the other kids? Maybe if they knew Hope's story, they'd understand better." Emma nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah. And we could show them how awesome Hope is, like how she can do cartwheels even with her prosthetic leg." Hope, who had been quiet until now, lifted her head. "Do you really think that would work?" she asked, her voice small but hopeful. Dr. Marcos smiled encouragingly. "I think it's a wonderful idea. Sometimes people fear or misunderstand things that are different. By sharing your story and showing them who you really are, we might be able to change their minds." The next day, Dr. Marcos accompanied the girls to school. He met with the principal and teachers, and together they devised a plan. They would hold an assembly where Hope, with the support of her sisters, would share her story with the entire school. The day of the assembly arrived, and the auditorium buzzed with curious whispers as the students filed in. Dr. Marcos sat in the front row, his heart swelling with pride as his three daughters took the stage. Hope stood in the center, flanked by Emma and Lucia, their hands clasped tightly together. Hope's voice trembled slightly as she began to speak, but grew stronger with each word. She told the story of her birth, of the challenges she had faced, and of the strength she had found in her family and in herself. She spoke of her prosthetic leg not as a limitation, but as a symbol of her resilience. As Hope spoke, a hush fell over the auditorium. Even the youngest children seemed captivated by her words. When she finished, there was a moment of silence, and then, spontaneously, one child began to clap. Soon, the entire auditorium erupted in applause. In the days that followed, Dr. Marcos noticed a significant change in the school's atmosphere. Children who had once avoided Hope now approached her with curiosity and admiration. The bullying ceased, replaced by a new understanding and respect. This experience marked a turning point for the triplets. They had faced their first major challenge together and emerged stronger for it. Dr. Marcos realized that his daughters possessed a strength that went beyond physical resilience. They had the power to change hearts and minds. Inspired by this realization, Dr. Marcos decided to enroll the girls in martial arts classes. He believed that learning self-defense would not only boost their confidence but also teach them discipline and respect for others. The girls embraced the idea with enthusiasm, eager for a new challenge. Their first class was a mix of excitement and nervousness. The dojo was filled with children of various ages, all dressed in crisp white uniforms. The sensei, a kind-faced woman named Maria, welcomed them warmly. "Remember," she said, looking each girl in the eye, "martial arts is not about fighting. It's about building strength in your body and in your mind." As the class progressed, it became clear that each girl had her own strengths and challenges. Lucia, always the quickest learner, picked up the basic moves with ease. Emma's boundless energy made her a natural at the more acrobatic techniques. Hope, however, struggled to find her balance with her prosthetic leg. Frustration began to creep into Hope's expression as she watched her sisters effortlessly execute moves that she found challenging. The sensei, noticing Hope's struggle, approached her with a gentle smile. "Hope," she said softly, kneeling down to meet the girl's eyes. "Everybody is different, and every martial artist must find their own way. Your prosthetic leg isn't a weakness. It's a unique strength. Let's work together to find how you can use it to your advantage." Over the next few weeks, Sensei Maria worked closely with Hope, adapting techniques to suit her unique needs. They discovered that Hope's prosthetic leg, far from being a hindrance, could be used as a powerful tool in certain moves. The extra weight and durability of the prosthetic made her kicks particularly formidable when she learned to balance properly. As Hope began to gain confidence in her abilities, her sisters rallied around her. Lucia would stay up late, helping Hope practice her forms in the living room. Emma, with her natural athleticism, would challenge Hope to friendly sparring matches, always encouraging and never patronizing. Dr. Marcos watched this transformation with a mixture of pride and awe. He saw how the discipline of martial arts was shaping his daughters, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. They were learning the value of perseverance, the importance of supporting one another, and the power of embracing their unique qualities. One evening, as the girls were practicing in the backyard, Dr. Marcos overheard a conversation that brought tears to his eyes. Hope had just executed a perfect roundhouse kick, her prosthetic leg slicing through the air with precision. "That was amazing, Hope," Emma exclaimed, her eyes wide with admiration. Lucia nodded in agreement. "You're getting so strong. I bet you could take on anyone in the class now." Hope beamed at her sisters, but then her smile faltered slightly. "Do you really think so? Sometimes I still feel different." Lucia put her arm around Hope's shoulders. "And of course you're different," she said firmly. "We all are. That's what makes us special." Emma chimed in. "Yeah, remember what Dad always says, our differences are our superpowers." Hope's smile returned, brighter than ever. "You're right," she said, straightening her shoulders. "And my superpower just happens to be an awesome robot leg that can kick through boards." The three girls dissolved into giggles, their laughter echoing through the yard. Dr. Marcos, watching from the kitchen window, felt his heart swell with love and pride. His daughters were growing into strong, confident young women, each unique and beautiful in her own way. As the months passed, the girls' progress in martial arts continued to impress both their sensei and their father. They advanced through the belt ranks, each achievement celebrated as a family milestone. Dr. Marcos made sure to attend every grading ceremony, his chest puffed with pride as he watched his daughters demonstrate their skills. The martial arts training had effects that reached far beyond the dojo. At school, the girls carried themselves with a new confidence. Hope, once the target of bullies, now walked the hallways with her head held high. Her prosthetic leg, once a source of shame, had become a badge of honor, a symbol of her strength and resilience. Lucia and Emma, too, had grown. Their protective instincts towards Hope had evolved into a deep respect for their sister's abilities. They no longer saw her as someone who needed sheltering, but as an equal partner in their adventures. One day, as they were walking home from school, the girls encountered a situation that put all their training to the test. In a nearby park, they noticed a group of older boys harassing a younger child, pushing him around and trying to take his backpack. Without hesitation, the triplets sprang into action. Lucia, always the strategist, quickly assessed the situation. "Emma, you go left. Hope, take the right. I'll approach from the front. Remember what Sensei Maria taught us about de-escalation." The girls moved with a synchronicity that spoke of their years of training together. They surrounded the group, their stance firm but non-threatening. Hope spoke first, her voice calm but authoritative. "Hey, what's going on here?" The bullies, surprised by the interruption, turned to face the newcomers. One of them, a tall boy with a sneer on his face, stepped forward. "None of your business. Walk away if you know what's good for you." Emma, her eyes flashing with determination, responded, "We can't do that. You're hurting someone, and that makes it our business. Lucia added, "We don't want to fight, but we will if we have to. Why don't you just let him go, and we can all walk away?" The bullies hesitated, clearly not expecting such a united front. Their eyes darted between the three girls, lingering for a moment on Hope's prosthetic leg. Hope noticed their gaze and straightened her posture, channeling all the confidence she had gained over the past months. "Yeah, I have a prosthetic leg," she said, her voice strong and clear. "And trust me, you don't want to find out what it can do." There was a moment of tense silence, and then, almost imperceptibly, the bullies began to back away. The leader, trying to save face, muttered, "Whatever, this isn't worth our time anyway." They skulked off, shooting angry glances over their shoulders, but not daring to challenge the triplets further. As soon as the bullies were out of sight, the girls rushed to check on the young boy they had rescued. He was shaken, but unharmed, looking at the triplets with a mixture of awe and gratitude. "Are you okay?" Lucia asked gently, helping him pick up his scattered belongings. The boy nodded, his eyes wide. "That was amazing," he said. "You guys are like superheroes or something." Emma grinned. "Nah, we're just regular kids who know how to stand up for what's right." Hope knelt down next to the boy, her prosthetic leg gleaming in the afternoon sun. "Sometimes," she said softly, "the things that make us different are the things that make us strong. Remember that, okay?" The boy nodded solemnly, his eyes fixed on Hope's leg with newfound admiration, rather than curiosity or pity. As they walked the young boy home, ensuring he was safe, the triplets felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything they had experienced before. They had used their skills not just for themselves, but to help someone in need. It was a powerful realization, one that would shape their path in the years to come. That evening, as they recounted the day's events to their father over dinner, Dr. Marcos listened with a mixture of concern and pride. He was worried about the potential danger they had faced, but he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the young women his daughters were becoming. "Girls," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I want you to know how proud I am of you. Not just for standing up to those bullies, but for doing it in a way that avoided violence. You used your words first, and your presence. That takes real strength." Lucia, Emma, and Hope exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Then Lucia spoke. "We learned from the best, Dad. You've always taught us to be strong, but also kind." Emma nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, and to use our powers for good." Hope, who had been quiet, suddenly looked up at her father, her eyes shining. "Dad," she said softly, "I think I know what I want to do when I grow up." "Doctor?" Marcos raised an eyebrow, encouraging her to continue. "I want to be a doctor, like you," Hope said, "but I want to specialize in working with kids who have prosthetics or other physical challenges. I want to show them that they can do anything, just like you and my sisters showed me." The table fell silent for a moment as the weight of Hope's words sank in. Then, almost in unison, Lucia and Emma exclaimed, "Us too, Doctor." Marcos felt his heart swell with an emotion he couldn't quite name, a mixture of pride, love, and a bittersweet realization that his little girls were growing up, finding their path in the world. "That's a wonderful goal," he said, his voice slightly husky. "All three of you have so much to offer the world. And whatever path you choose, I know you'll face it together, supporting each other every step of the way." As the conversation flowed around the dinner table, filled with excited plans for the future and reflections on how far they had come, Dr. Marcos found himself transported back to that fateful day in the hospital. He remembered the fear and uncertainty he had felt, taking on the responsibility of 3 newborn girls, 2 of whom faced seemingly insurmountable challenges. Looking at his daughters now, confident, compassionate, and fiercely supportive of each other, he knew that every sleepless night, every worry, every sacrifice had been worth it. These extraordinary girls, brought together by circumstance and bound by love, were more than just his daughters. They were a testament to the power of unconditional love, the strength found in embracing differences, and the extraordinary potential that lies within every child. waiting to be nurtured and believed in. As the evening wore on and the girls began to clear the table, chattering excitedly about their plans for the future, Dr. Marcos sat back in his chair, a contented smile on his face. He knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, his daughters would face them with the same courage, compassion, and unity they had shown today. And he would be there, every step of the way, cheering them on and marveling at the incredible young women they were becoming. The journey that had begun in that hospital room, with 3 tiny babies and a life-altering decision, was far from over. In fact, Dr. Marcos realized it was just beginning, and he couldn't wait to see where it would lead them next. As the years passed, Lucia, Emma, and Hope continued to grow and evolve, their bond strengthening with each new challenge they faced. Their high school years brought a whirlwind of experiences, each one shaping them into the young women they were becoming. Lucia, with her sharp mind and nurturing nature, excelled in her studies and became deeply involved in peer counseling. She found her calling in helping other students navigate the turbulent waters of adolescence, drawing on her own experiences to offer empathy and guidance. Her teachers often remarked on her maturity and insight, predicting a bright future in psychology or social work. Emma, ever the bundle of energy, discovered a passion for sports medicine. Her experience with martial arts had sparked an interest in how the human body worked, and she threw herself into anatomy classes and sports physiology with characteristic enthusiasm. She became a fixture at school sports events, not as an athlete, but as a student trainer, eagerly learning from the school's physiotherapist. Hope, true to her word, remained focused on her goal of becoming a doctor specializing in pediatric prosthetics. She sought out internships at local hospitals and prosthetics clinics, spending her summers learning about the latest advancements in the field. Her unique perspective as both a patient and an aspiring professional made her a favorite among the young patients she encountered. Dr. Marcos watched his daughters' pursuits with a mixture of pride and amazement. He marveled at how their early challenges had shaped their aspirations, turning potential obstacles into sources of strength and purpose. Yet, as they approached their final year of high school, he found himself facing a bittersweet reality. His girls were growing up, and soon they would be leaving the nest. The topic of college became a frequent discussion at the dinner table. The girls, inseparable for so long, now faced the prospect of choosing different paths. It was during one of these discussions that Dr. Marcos noticed a tension he hadn't seen before. "I've been looking at programs in New York," Lucia announced one evening, her eyes shining with excitement. "There's a great psychology program that aligns perfectly with what I want to do." Emma nodded enthusiastically. "That's awesome, Lucia. I've actually been considering a sports medicine program in California. The internship opportunities there are incredible." As Lucia and Emma chatted animatedly about their potential choices, Dr. Marcos noticed Hope's uncharacteristic silence. She pushed her food around her plate, her brow furrowed in thought. "Hope, sweetheart?" Dr. Marcos prompted gently. "Have you been looking at any programs?" Hope looked up, her eyes conflicted. I've been offered a place in a special program here in São Paulo," she said quietly. "It's a combined undergraduate and medical school program, with a focus on prosthetics and pediatric care. It's exactly what I want to do, but—" She trailed off, glancing at her sisters. The table fell silent as the implication of Hope's words sank in. For the first time in their lives, the triplets were facing the possibility of being separated. Lucia reached out and took Hope's hand. "Hope, that sounds like an amazing opportunity. You have to take it." Emma nodded in agreement, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Yeah, it's perfect for you. We always knew we might end up in different places, right?" Hope's eyes filled with tears. "But we've never been apart. How can we be the triplets if we're not together?" Dr. Marcos felt his heart ache for his daughters. He had always known this day would come, but seeing the pain and uncertainty on their faces made it all too real. Girls," he said softly, drawing their attention. "Come with me. There's something I want to show you." Curious and slightly confused, the triplets followed their father to his study. Dr. Marcos went to his desk and pulled out an old, well-worn photo album. He sat down on the small sofa, patting the spaces beside him. The girls squeezed in, just as they had done countless times over the years when it was story time. Dr. Marcos opened the album, revealing photos they had never seen before. The first page showed 3 tiny babies in the NICU, Lucia in one incubator, Emma and Hope still conjoined in another. "Do you remember the story of how we became a family?" Dr. Marcos asked, his voice thick with emotion. The girls nodded, their eyes fixed on the photos. "When I made the decision to adopt you," Dr. Marcos continued, "many people thought I was crazy. They said it would be too hard, that I was taking on too much. But do you know what I saw when I looked at you?" He turned the page, revealing a photo of himself holding all 3 girls, his face a mixture of exhaustion and pure joy. "I saw 3 incredible, strong, beautiful souls who were meant to be together. Not because you were born at the same time, or because 2 of you were physically connected, but because your spirits were connected in a way I couldn't explain." He looked at each of his daughters in turn. "That connection doesn't disappear with distance. It's not dependent on you being in the same place or doing the same things. It's a part of who you are." Hope wiped away a tear. "But Dad, what if we drift apart? What if we lose what makes us, Doctor?" Marcos smiled gently. "Do you remember when Emma and Hope were separated? Everyone was worried about how it would affect them. But what happened?" Lucia answered, her voice soft with realization. "They got stronger. They learned to be individuals while still being connected." "Exactly." Dr. Marcos nodded. "This is another kind of separation, but it's also an opportunity for growth. You'll each have your own experiences, your own challenges, and when you come back together, you'll have so much more to share, so much more to give to each other and to the world." Emma looked thoughtful. "So, you're saying it's okay for us to go our separate ways?" Dr. Marcos shook his head. "I'm saying that no matter where you go, you'll never truly be separate. Your bond goes beyond physical proximity. It's in your hearts, in your shared experiences, in the love you have for each other." He turned to the last page of the album, which held a recent photo of the 3 girls at their martial arts tournament, arms around each other, faces beaming with shared triumph. "This," he said, tapping the photo, "this doesn't change because you're in different cities or different countries. It grows, it evolves, just like you." The girls were quiet for a moment, absorbing their father's words. Then, slowly, they began to smile. Hope straightened her shoulders, a new determination in her eyes. "You're right, Dad," she said. "We've never let challenges stop us before. Why should we start now?" Lucia nodded, squeezing Hope's hand. "We'll always be the triplets, no matter where we are." Emma grinned, her usual enthusiasm returning. "And think of all the different things we'll learn. We can share everything when we get together. It'll be like tripling our experiences." As the girls began to chat excitedly about their plans, the tension from earlier dissipating, Dr. Marcos felt a weight lift from his heart. He knew there would be difficult times ahead, the first holidays apart, the challenges of maintaining long-distance relationships, the inevitable homesickness. But he also knew that the foundation of love, resilience, and mutual support they had built over the years would see them through. Watching his daughters, now young women on the brink of their own adventures, Dr. Marcos felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey that had begun in that hospital room 18 years ago had been filled with challenges, tears, laughter, and more love than he could have ever imagined. As they stood on the threshold of a new chapter, he knew that whatever the future held, they would face it as they always had, together in spirit, if not in body, bound by a love that knew no boundaries. The triplets' story was far from over. In fact, Dr. Marcos realized with a mixture of excitement and wistfulness, the most exciting chapters were yet to be written, and he couldn't wait to see what remarkable tales his extraordinary daughters would have to tell. The day of departure arrived all too quickly. The house was a flurry of activity as suitcases were packed, last-minute items were frantically searched for, and tearful goodbyes were exchanged. Dr. Marcos stood in the doorway, watching as his daughters prepared to embark on their separate journeys. Lucia was the first to leave, her flight to New York departing earliest. As she hugged her sisters tightly, she whispered words of encouragement and love. "We've got this," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We're the triplets, remember? Distance is nothing." Emma was next, her enthusiasm barely containing her nervousness as she prepared to head to California. She bounced on her toes, a habit she'd had since childhood when excited or anxious. "We'll video chat every day," she promised, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "And just think of all the cool stuff we'll have to tell each other." Hope, staying in São Paulo, felt a strange mix of emotions. While part of her was thrilled to be starting her dream program, another part ached watching her sisters prepare to leave. "It won't be the same without you here," she admitted softly. Dr. Marcos gathered all three into a tight embrace. "Remember," he said, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat, "you carry each other in your hearts. Your bond is stronger than any distance." As Lucia and Emma's taxis pulled away, Hope and Dr. Marcos stood arm in arm, watching until they disappeared from view. The house felt oddly quiet, the absence of two-thirds of the triplets palpable. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of adjustment for all three girls. Lucia threw herself into her psychology program, fascinated by the new perspectives she was gaining. She found herself drawing on her experiences as a triplet in many of her classes, offering unique insights into sibling dynamics and the power of familial bonds. Emma embraced the California lifestyle with her characteristic enthusiasm. She joined study groups, volunteered at local sports clinics, and even took up surfing in her spare time. Her understanding of body mechanics from years of martial arts training gave her an edge in her sports medicine courses. Hope, while not facing the challenge of a new city, found herself navigating a different kind of adjustment. For the first time, she was forging an identity separate from her sisters. Her unique perspective as a prosthetic user combined with her medical training made her a standout in her program. Professors often sought her input, valuing the personal experience she brought to theoretical discussions. Despite the distance, the triplets made good on their promise to stay connected. They set up a regular video chat schedule, each girl eagerly sharing her experiences and challenges. Lucia would recount interesting case studies from her psychology classes. Emma would demonstrate new physiotherapy techniques she was learning, and Hope would excitedly discuss the latest advancements in prosthetic technology. Dr. Marcos, too, was adjusting to the new normal. The house felt too big, too quiet without all three girls. He threw himself into his work at the hospital, but always made sure to be available for video chats or late-night phone calls when one of his daughters needed advice or just a comforting voice. As the months passed, the initial pangs of separation began to ease, replaced by a growing sense of individual identity and purpose. The girls found themselves applying the lessons they'd learned from each other in their new environments. Lucia's nurturing nature made her a natural leader in group projects. Emma's boundless energy and optimism helped her forge quick friendships in her new city. Hope's resilience and determination impressed both her professors and her fellow students, many of whom were inspired by her story. It was during their first holiday break, when all three girls returned home to São Paulo, that the true impact of their time apart became apparent. As they sat around the dinner table, sharing stories and laughing, Dr. Marcos noticed a new maturity in his daughters. They had grown, not just in their knowledge and skills, but in their understanding of themselves and each other. Lucia, always the thoughtful one, put it into words one evening as they sat in the living room, just like old times. "You know," she said, looking at her sisters and father, "I was so scared of losing our connection when we went our separate ways. But I think being apart has actually made us stronger." Emma nodded enthusiastically. "Totally. It's like we're learning all these new things, and when we come back together, we have so much more to share." Hope, who had been quieter than usual, spoke up. "I've realized something," she said softly. "Our experiences as triplets, everything we've been through together, it's given us a unique perspective. And now we're taking that perspective out into the world, each in our own way." Dr. Marcos felt a surge of pride as he listened to his daughters. They had taken the foundation of love and support they'd built as a family and used it as a launching pad for their individual journeys. Yet, rather than drifting apart, their experiences were weaving a richer, more complex tapestry of their shared life. As the holiday break came to an end and Lucia and Emma prepared to return to their respective universities, there was a different energy in the house. The sadness of separation was still there, but it was overshadowed by a sense of excitement and purpose. Each girl was eager to return to her studies, armed with new insights and renewed motivation. On the day of departure, as they stood in the airport saying their goodbyes, Dr. Marcos was struck by the strength and confidence radiating from his daughters. They were no longer the uncertain teenagers he had reassured months ago. They were young women coming into their own, secure in their bond and excited for their futures. Lucia, her eyes bright with determination, hugged her sisters tightly. "We're going to change the world," she said firmly. "Each in our own way, but together." Emma grinned, her enthusiasm infectious. "Absolutely. The world won't know what hit it when the triplets are through." Hope, standing tall and proud, nodded in agreement. "We've got this," she said, echoing Lucia's words from months ago. "We're the triplets, after all." As Dr. Marcos watched his daughters walk towards their gates, arms linked and heads held high, he felt a profound sense of peace. The journey that had begun in that hospital room all those years ago had led to this moment. 3 extraordinary young women, bound by love and shared experience, ready to make their mark on the world. He knew that challenges lay ahead. There would be difficult exams, homesickness, and the inevitable ups and downs of young adulthood. But he also knew, with unshakable certainty, that his daughters would face whatever came their way with the same strength, resilience, and unwavering support for each other that had defined their lives so far. As the girls disappeared from view, Dr. Marcos smiled to himself. The story of the triplets, Lucia, Emma, and Hope, was far from over. In fact, he realized, the most exciting chapters were just beginning to unfold. And he couldn't wait to see what remarkable tales his extraordinary daughters would write next. The years flew by in a whirlwind of academic achievements, personal growth, and unwavering familial support. Before Dr. Marcos knew it, his daughters were approaching their graduation ceremonies, each having carved out her own unique path in the world. Lucia, with her keen insight into human behavior and her natural empathy, had excelled in her psychology program. Her thesis on the psychological impact of physical disabilities on family dynamics, inspired by her own experiences, had garnered attention from leading researchers in the field. As she stood on the stage in New York, accepting her diploma with honors, she felt a surge of gratitude for the journey that had led her to this moment. Emma's boundless energy had served her well in the fast-paced world of sports medicine. Her innovative approach to rehabilitation, combining traditional techniques with elements of martial arts, had impressed both her professors and the professional athletes she had interned with. As she celebrated her graduation in California, surrounded by newfound friends and mentors, she couldn't help but think of how far she had come from the little girl who once struggled to find her place. Hope, true to her name, had become a beacon of inspiration in her medical program. Her unique perspective as both a doctor in training and a prosthetic user had led to groundbreaking research in pediatric prosthetics. As she received her white coat in Sao Paulo, symbolizing her transition from medical student to doctor, she felt a profound sense of purpose. She was no longer just a recipient of medical care. She was now in a position to transform the lives of children facing similar challenges. Dr. Marcos attended all 3 ceremonies, his heart swelling with pride as he watched each of his daughters take this significant step into their futures. The triplets, despite the physical distance between them, remained as close as ever. They had developed a ritual of video calling each other before every major event, offering words of encouragement and love. As they embarked on their professional careers, the impact of their unique bond and experiences became even more apparent. Lucia's practice as a child psychologist quickly gained recognition for her innovative approach to treating children with disabilities and their families. She developed a support group program that brought together siblings of children with special needs, drawing on her own experiences with hope to create a safe space for these often overlooked family members. Emma's career in sports medicine took an unexpected turn when she was offered a position with the Paralympic Committee. Her understanding of the unique challenges faced by athletes with prosthetics, gained through years of supporting Hope, made her an invaluable asset to the team. She threw herself into the role with characteristic enthusiasm, working tirelessly to develop training programs that pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible for athletes with disabilities. Hope's pediatric prosthetics practice became renowned for its compassionate, holistic approach to care. She didn't just fit children with prosthetics, she mentored them, showing by example that a fulfilling, active life was not only possible but expected. Her clinic became a place of hope and empowerment, where children and their families could see a bright future beyond their immediate challenges. Despite their busy schedules and the physical distance between them, the triplets made it a priority to come together regularly. Their reunions were filled with laughter, shared stories, and an ever-deepening appreciation for the unique bond they shared. It was during one of these reunions, as they sat in Dr. Marcos's living room, that an idea began to take shape. Lucia, always the one to verbalize the thoughts that often floated unspoken between them, was the first to give it voice. "You know," she said, looking thoughtfully at her sisters, "I've been thinking. We each have something special to offer in our fields. But imagine what we could do if we combined our expertise." Emma's eyes lit up with excitement. Like a super clinic for kids with disabilities, where they could get medical care, psychological support, and physical training all in one place. Hope nodded enthusiastically. And not just for the kids, but for their families too. A place where siblings could get support, where parents could learn how to navigate the challenges ahead. Dr. Marcos, who had been listening quietly, felt a surge of emotion. He saw in that moment not just his daughters, but the culmination of a journey that had begun in a hospital room over 2 decades ago. "Girls," he said, his voice thick with pride, "I think you're onto something extraordinary." The idea quickly gained momentum. The triplets began to pour their evenings and weekends into developing a comprehensive plan for what they called the Triplet Center, a multidisciplinary clinic that would revolutionize care for children with disabilities and their families. Lucia would head the psychological support division, implementing programs for both the children and their family members. Emma would be in charge of the physical therapy and sports program, using her experience with Paralympic athletes to inspire and challenge the children. Hope would lead the medical team, overseeing prosthetic fittings and ongoing care. As word of their plan spread, support began to pour in. Colleagues from each of their fields, impressed by the comprehensive nature of the program, offered their expertise. Dr. Marcos, seeing his daughter's dream taking shape, decided it was time to step back from his own practice and lend his years of experience to their project. The day the Triplet Center opened its doors was one of mixed emotions for the family. As they stood together, cutting the ribbon in front of a crowd of supporters, media, and their first patients, each of them felt the weight of the journey that had brought them to this moment. Dr. Marcos, looking at his daughters, confident, compassionate women who had turned their own challenges into a force for good in the world, felt a sense of completion. The decision he had made all those years ago, to open his heart and his home to 3 tiny babies, had led to this incredible moment. Lucia, Emma, and Hope, holding hands as they often had as children, felt the strength of their bond more powerfully than ever. They had taken different paths, grown in different directions, but those paths had led them back together, stronger and wiser for the journey. As they welcomed their first patients into the center, the triplets shared a look of determination and hope. They knew that the road ahead would be challenging, that there would be obstacles to overcome and difficult days to face. But they also knew that together, there was nothing they couldn't handle. The story of the triplets, Lucia, Emma, and Hope, had come full circle. From 3 tiny babies, abandoned and facing an uncertain future, they had grown into women who were changing the world, one life at a time. And as they stood on the threshold of this new chapter, they knew that their greatest adventures, their most profound impacts, were still to come. Dr. Marcos, Watching his daughters guide a young girl with a prosthetic leg into the center, smiled to himself. The journey that had begun in that hospital room had led to this beautiful moment, but it was far from over. In fact, he realized with a sense of wonder and anticipation, the most meaningful chapters of their extraordinary story were just beginning to unfold.